champion of public speaking. Donnie Crandall is a three-time world champion of public speaking, semifinalist, as well as a top 10 finalist in 2016. In 2017, he became the 71st accredited speaker with Toastmasters. Donnie has authored 6 books, including his latest one called Audience Connection, the X Factor of Great Speakers and Speeches. He is married with a 2.5-year-old and currently serves as a chaplain in the Air National Guard and a lead pastor of Faith Community Church in Reno, Nevada. He is finishing up his Doctor of Ministry degree this year in cross-cultural engagement. Today, he will be sharing some ideas on how to keep an audience engaged. Help me welcome Donnie.
Hello, everyone. I trust you can see me okay.
Yep.
And hear me okay. If there's any problems or if there's something pressing, feel free to interrupt me at any time, and I'm fine with that. It's exciting to be doing this for you today. We've had this plan for several months now. I think you have a very diligent person in Kathy that scheduled these, and it sounds like she had a lot of support and participation for this idea. So I credit you with that great idea of having this done in your club. Today I want to talk about audience engagement, and that is exactly what this little book is that I wrote. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Audience Connection, and I don't hold it up to promote it as much as I hold it up to say I think that's the absolute necessary quality if we're going to make a difference when we speak to people. If it's one person, 25 people, or 1,000 people. The ultimate question is, did we connect with the audience? If it's a Toastmasters club and it's 12 people, we have to walk away asking the question, did I connect with my audience? Because that's the real difference maker. I remember one thing Lance Miller said, former world champion of public speaking. He said, you can keep your hand in your pocket. And that's not really the deciphering factor as to whether or not you were successful. You can say filler words, and that's not even going to disqualify you. The ultimate question is, did you connect with the audience? So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we engage and connect with an audience, if it's a keynote, or if it's a 7-minute speech in your club, or if it's a briefing, or if it's some type of a cheerleading talk that you're giving to a group of your staff, or whatever it might be. On a big picture scale, I want to start with this. Here's how I would define success as to whether or not you engage the audience when you're done speaking. Did my speech become our speech somewhere throughout the talk? Did that transition take place to where I went from speaking to you to the feeling that I was speaking with you? To say it one more way, what I shared with you, did we share in it together before my speech was over? So that's the idea of where I'd like for us to get, is that idea of, I want my speech to become our speech. I want you to feel like, man, that wasn't a speech I listened to today. That was a speech that I participated in. I was part of that speech. Somehow I got drawn in, and I felt like we were in it together. To me, that's success as far as engaging an audience. And that doesn't just happen on its own. It may look like it just happens on its own, but although it's kind of an X factor where we don't necessarily think about, wow, what were the ingredients? What was the recipe that was used for that speaker to really connect with that audience? It may seem kind of ubiquitous and a little bit esoteric, if you will, but there are some things that we can do to help us achieve that end of engaging the audience and making the speech or the keynote feel like they were part of it. So let me get to that. If you have a piece of paper, write out the acrostic pie cart. P-I-E-C-A-R-T. Pie cart. These are 7 different points. They're not exhaustive. They're not even totally comprehensive. But I think you'll find in these 7 points that you are already doing maybe several of these, maybe all of them. But hopefully you'll hear something today that you can add to what you're already doing to help you engage and connect with the audience. And maybe you'll hear something a little different than you've heard it before. So there's 7 points. Each one of the letters represent a point. So let's start with the P when it comes to engaging the audience. I believe if you want to connect with a crowd of 1, 100, or 1,000, is you have to be passionate. Do you believe in what you are saying? That's the very first image that I think we portray, and it's going to be a difference maker as to whether people want to really sit up and listen and take note of what you're saying. Is there within you a passion, an energy, an enthusiasm that really warrants the listener to want to hear what you have to say? Being passionate about it. Now, don't mistake being passionate with being loud. Sometimes I think we do that. We think, well, passion means that the volume was really ratcheted up. That's not necessarily true. Nor should we confuse passion with over dramatic, because those can also not necessarily be in the same ballpark either. But passion is something that comes from your soul. It's something that people can read and innately see within you. And that passion comes from a confidence of what you're talking about. Not only a knowledge about it, but a belief that's strong in what you're communicating to other people. So I think that engages an audience when they sense that. The I in the word PICART is the word involve. Do we involve the audience so that they don't leave thinking, wow, that was a great talk that he just spoke to me. Instead, they leave saying, I was part of that speech. Now, they may not know why they were part of that speech because they don't know all the little tricks and techniques that I'm going to talk to you about today, but they somehow feel like they were in it. They got involved in it. So here's my question to you. How do you involve an audience in what you're saying? All of us have heard way too many monologues. And as we know in Toastmasters, that's far from good communicating. If you listen to the best communicators, you'll find that all of them have a unique way of involving and the audience so that the audience feels like they're participating. Sometimes it can be done through a question. Hey, Joe, I want you to think about this. Or District 9, I want you to consider this. Give people a chance to think about something. Or we can ask for a raising of hands. That's a way for people to participate. Many times I've had an audience repeat a sentence, finish a sentence for me, or I've had a volunteer come up to the stage, or I've had people turn to the person to their left and say something. It doesn't matter how you involve the audience as much as it is that you do involve the audience. If we don't do that, we're not communicating. We're monologuing. And there's very few people who just want to sit there, fold their hands, and sit quietly and listen to somebody talk and not feel like they get to be a part of it. Everybody wants to play. Everybody, and I'll do a lot of callbacks in my speaking, so I'll mention somebody's name. I'm a pastor, so often on Sunday mornings, I'll call out someone's name and mention something about their life that connects with the point that I'm trying to make. What does that do for a person when you call out their name in a speech that you're giving? Man, they're not falling asleep. They got to be a part of it. And so when the better we get at that discipline of involving people, I'll give you one quick illustration. There was a Toastmaster who was competing for the humorous speech contest. So just before the contest, he took me in a side room and he gave me a speech. And he said, what do you think? And I said, that's a great speech, but it won't win. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, it won't win because you don't let anybody participate with you. He said, well, how can I do that? I said, okay, do you know that part of the speech when you were in Little League and everybody in the stands were pulling for you because you were a horrible hitter, and the people in the stands started saying, Brian, Brian. I said, do you know when you do that in your speech? I want you to let the audience do that. He said, really? I said, yeah, I want you to let them participate in this speech. So he did that, and he let the audience say, Brian, and the audience loved it. I mean, they didn't know he had coaching 5 minutes before his humorous speech, and he did win the contest, which is probably the only person I've ever helped win anything in Toastmasters. But I do think I helped him in that. But he involved the audience. It's an absolute key. And however you do that, maybe according to your creativity, your personality. But one thing I would caution against is don't keep asking questions and having people raise their hand. That's annoying as heck after about the second time. And some speakers do that. I think they overkill that. But that's a question. When the speech is over, did you let people get involved in your speech one way or another? The E in the pine cart is entertaining. Well, I don't believe that you have to be the most entertaining song and dance person in the world to be an effective communicator. But I do think that you have to use your uniqueness to help people laugh, maybe help people cry, maybe do something interesting, creative, and fun. For example, when I was competing in the semifinals a couple years ago in Las Vegas, one of the competitors in my speech was the one who got third place this last year, Sherry Su from China. She did a whole speech using the letter S. She said, hi, I'm Sherry, and I am sweet, short, and super nice. And her whole speech had these S's, and it had the quality of entertaining to it. Now, again, we don't have to keep people in stitches to be an effective communicator, but I do think there has to have some value of entertaining where people feel like it's fun. Oh, this had a fun element to this speech. It just really I had a good time listening to it. One of the other speakers that competed against me took baseball caps at the end of his speech, and he threw baseball caps out to everyone with the letter on it. And he won first place because everybody likes free stuff, right? So he won first place, and it was entertaining. That's all I want to say. You can be entertaining in whatever way fits your style, but I think that's something in our world that element, it can be a really powerful element when it's there. Now let's go to the C in the word pie cart, customized. Here's the question. Did it feel like my speech was written to address your goals, interests, needs, demographic problems, nuances? Did it feel like the speech that you heard, let's just say, did it feel like it actually addressed who you are and the things that you go through and the statistics that match your club? It has to be customized. If you have a speaker that's speaking to a bunch of plumbers and he uses engineer language, the plumbers aren't going to feel like that speech was written for them. Every person wants to feel like you wrote that speech, that keynote for this audience at this time. And the way that we do that is we do our homework. We find out information about the place where we're speaking, find out as much information as we can, because our speeches need to be not only interesting, but they need to be, the people need to know we're interested in them. We've all met somebody in our lives and had a discussion with them, and when we did, we felt like, man, I felt like I was the only person in the world when they were talking to me. When you get that feeling, that's an amazing feeling of engagement. And when we can customize what we have to say to an audience and they feel like we're speaking their language, it just draws them right in. It engages them. The A. So we've done the P, the I, the C, the A. Assume the best about your audience, not the worst. What do I mean by that? Oftentimes, we will speak to an audience as if they're not doing what we're presenting to them, instead of complimenting them and saying, hey, I know you already do this. Many of you are really good at this already, but maybe we can add a little something to what you're already doing. When we assume the best about the audience and that people are already making progress in what we're talking about, it will come off in a non-narcissistic way. It will come off in a helpful way. And people will be endeared to us as speakers if they feel like we're not speaking down to them, preaching to them, but we're actually complimenting and celebrating with them a reality that they are already engaged in doing. So we assume the best about an audience, and we want them to feel that. The R in PyCart is relatable. We kind of touched on this with customize, but I think it's a little bit different. And it's the question of, do we speak the language of the people that we're talking to? Are my illustrations and examples ones that they can relate to, the people can relate to? Is the tone of my words, can they relate to that? Are the details of what I'm talking about, the information I'm giving, is it relatable? We have to have this sense of being approachable and relatable and a real person. Because if we're speaking on another level, or we're speaking over people's heads, it's not going to allow us to connect. And remember, it's all about connecting to the audience, all about engaging them, and they're not going to feel engaged. But when you start using practical examples that people actually have in their lives, man, they're going to connect. Even if you're not a great speaker, if we can learn to speak the language of the people and talk about what they talk about, it will go a long way as far as connecting with the audience. And then finally, in PyCart is the T for takeaways. I think it's really important that we give every audience something to take away. Now, this can be something physical and tangible. Last Sunday in church, I did this little talk about worry, and everybody got a little 4x6 card that said stop on one side. And then on the other side was a scripture verse that said, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. So throughout the service, we took out the card and we said, stop worrying. And we turned it over and we read that together. And then I encourage people to take that home. That's a very practical tool. It's a tangible tool, and that's a good takeaway. But sometimes it's not a physical, tangible thing. Sometimes it's an idea. Sometimes it's a tool. Sometimes it's a perspective that we want people to take away. Whatever it is, we want to offer that to people so that they have something, even if it's a 5-minute speech in your Toastmaster Club. I would say, what do you want a person to take home or take away from this speech? And if it's a question you want them to think about, okay, that's a good thing for someone to take home. If it's a practical thing in their life, you want them to say to their spouse or their significant other something affirming for the next month, okay, that's a good little activity or an action plan. But if we don't give people some takeaway, probably what is said is going to be lost, and it's never going to be applied. And we don't want to waste time giving speeches with no application. We're writing speeches and taking the time because we want it to make a difference in people's lives. If it's 1, 100, or 1,000, and when we give them a takeaway, that provides that opportunity. So just to summarize, what we've talked about so far is we're using the word PyCart. P is for passionate, I is for involving, E is for entertaining, C is for customizing, A is for assuming the best, R is for being relatable, and T is for takeaways. And all of this is the behind the scenes steps, or not steps, but ways that we can help our speeches not just become a speech to someone, but a speech that we share, where people get to be involved and people get to be engaged in it. There's lots more I could talk about, but that's kind of briefly what I wanted to share. In my book, I kind of went a different route. I talked about audience connection and about being natural, likable, confident, practiced, and some of those different things in my book. But I wanted to share this today because I think this is kind of a little bit different approach. But ultimately, here's my takeaway for you, or here's a takeaway for you. If you can ask yourself this question every time you speak: did I involve the audience today? And how did I involve the audience today? Let that be your benchmark. And if you're not sure if you did, ask someone when the speech is over, or the evaluator, did I give people a chance to be a part of this speech through whatever means was necessary? Now, in this kind of a format, I don't know if you've been a part of this little presentation or not, because I can't really ask you questions till the end. This is not the way I like to do speeches. No offense to you. I'm just using this as an example. I'm all about, I have to feed off the audience. I have to be able to ask a question. I have to be able to ask you to do something in the middle of my speaking, so that it's always a two-way street. Always. We have to give people a chance to think about what we've said. We have to give an opportunity for maybe somebody to respond in a way that we piggyback off of what they say. I do that a lot. Because to me, good communication is way more than a one-way street of us giving information to people. It has everything to do with engaging them, and oftentimes that has to be a two-way street. So I'll throw out a question, let people say something, and then I'll address the question right in the middle of the speech, because I think that's just really fun to do it that way. At this time, I'd like to open up for questions, and along this line or anything else about me or the competitions I've been in, or what I do in life, or anything related to this, or maybe you have something. Maybe you could give us a practical technique or tool that you use to engage an audience. I'd love to hear that too. So if it's okay with our moderator here, we can open it up at this time.
Great. I have a couple questions. I saw 2 of your 3 appearances in the finals of the World Championship, and I also saw when you got your accredited speaker designation. There are not really that many speakers who are in both the contest world and the accredited speaker world. So my question is, are you done with contests now, or do you still want to pursue the World Championship, or are you satisfied now that you're an accredited speaker?
That's a great question. Thank you for that question. You know, it threw Toastmasters for a tailspin, because they didn't know what to do when I told them that I was applying for the accredited speaker. I would be on the stage for that, and I was also on the stage as a semifinalist. In fact, they told me I could at first, and then they called me back just a month before the contest and said, you know, this doesn't happen. So we're going to have to make a ruling here that we can't let you do accredited speaker and the semifinal contest. So it is unusual. It's unique that particular year when I had both of those opportunities to do that. But I think the accredited speaker is more like speaking in the real world, whereas the contests are Toastmaster centric, and they are not like the real world. Number one, the real world doesn't have you come for 7 minutes. A lot of the dynamics of Toastmasters don't apply in the real world when you give a keynote. And so I think as far as which one has the most value for a person who wants to pursue public speaking, the accredited speaker by a mile has more value, because you learn how to do a keynote for 45 minutes. And it's more about content than it is delivery. I mean, I could give you a list of reasons why it's more marketable and more valuable for a person who wants to actually do public speaking in the real world. It's more like a TED Talk, as you know.
Right.
Now with the contests, I'm stepping out of it this year, but this is the first time in 5 years that I've taken a break, and there's something in my mind and my blood that's saying, you should be getting ready for a speech right now. The contests are coming. You know, it's become part of my system. And it's like, I feel like something's wrong in the world right now. But my wife said, no, Donnie, you are sticking to what you said. You said you're not competing this year. And besides, they're sick of me on this district anyway. Nobody wants me to compete here. You know, if I competed one more time, I think they would crucify me, because I've now gone to the semifinals 3 times and nobody wants to see my face anymore. But I will compete. I want to compete again, but not this year, but probably next year.
Okay. Deborah has a question on behalf of somebody from our district who has been to the semifinals twice, but he's thinking that he won't try again because he thinks it's a younger person's game now. What do you think?
No, I don't think youth has anything to do with it. I don't think age is what it's about at all. I do think in all candidness, I think they were very happy to have 3 women in first, second, and third place last year. And
Me too.
I think that boy, I want to be careful here because I don't want to be politically incorrect or anything, but I do think it is, let's not forget, it's an international organization. And the more it can take the face and take the look of an international organization, I think the happier Toastmasters is and the more well-rounded it can be. Having said that, I would say this, regardless of age, race, gender, if you give a knockout speech, you're going to win. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care if it's even a white Anglo male can still win Toastmasters if he truly has the best speech. Now, I don't think he's favored, but I think it's possible. So I just think it really does. In all the competitions I've been in, I've questioned some judges on who won and, well, they gave it to her or him because of this. But I don't think when you get to the higher levels, the best speech, I mean, truly the best speech, is really hard for them not to win. So that's my take on it. I would not let the fact that I was older keep me from competing at all, because I think it's good for a person to compete, especially if they like it. Yeah. If you love competition and you like putting speeches together, that speech that you put together for that competition could change someone's life in the club, the area, the division, the district. So why not allow yourself to have fun with it? And if you don't win, you don't win. It's okay.
All right. Our president, Vicky Chatterton, wants to know how you use your books. Do you give them away or do you sell them from the back of the room?
I've done both. I did for the Sacramento district, for District 39, I did a breakfast, a leadership breakfast, and I took all my books and I did a talk, and I don't know how many books I had, 100, I think. And I thought, I'll just put $5 on them, and I'll just, I probably won't sell any, or maybe I'll sell some, I don't know. And they completely sold out, and I think it was because the price was right. But what I really love to do is give them away. So I'll go to a club and I'll speak maybe and do a little talk off one of the chapters, and then I'll give either several or all the books. If I can afford it myself, I'll just give everybody a book there. And boy, people really like you when you give them a free book. Yeah. So I would prefer to give them away as giveaway books, but I think they can be a good tool, even though my book is small, and even though it's self-published. It's amazing how it's given a little bit of credibility to my opportunities that I've had.
Good. Deborah, did you have a question about Donnie's Toastmasters Club? I didn't totally get
I was just wondering, Donnie, that you're a chaplain in the, is it Air National Guard? And I wonder if you have a Toastmasters Club on base there.
No, we've tried a couple times to put one on base, but honestly, it's so difficult and complex because, everybody has to check in at the gate. And for visitors to come to the gate, unless they're escorted one at a time, we have to get their driver's license, social security number, blood from their firstborn child to get people in the gate. And it would never be conducive for visitors to come. So that it basically just have to be for military personnel. And because everything is so fluid at the base, meetings pop up, emergencies, exercises, all these different things happen. It's so hard to get regularity. I had 2 demo meetings at our base hoping to get a club started. And it's just, unfortunately, the practicality of it is almost impossible.
I completely know where you're coming from there, because we do have a club on Air Force Base here in District 9, and it has had all of those kinds of problems and has come very, very close to dying several times, but we've got it going at the moment. So, but we do understand that. I have just one more question. What are you going to do with your doctorate?
That's a good question too. Well, the track is called Cross-Cultural Engagement, and it's through Multnomah Seminary in Portland, Oregon. I've been going at it 3 years full time now. I mean, I go out there for 2 weeks at a time, and I've done 6 5,000 word papers. It has been a lot of reading, a lot of things. I think I did it mostly as a personal goal, kind of on my bucket list, that I wanted to achieve this, but just to enhance my own personal ministry in the church. I think it has opportunities if I wanted to teach maybe at University of Nevada, Reno, because it's cross-cultural engagement. I think that kind of opens the door, because diversity is such a huge issue now. Pluralism is such a, it's such a big thing that the track itself and the title of it would open doors to be able to speak at secular universities if I wanted to go that route. But I didn't have anything specific. What I do want to have come out of it is my thesis project is an artifact. It's a resiliency tool for military leaders to overcome leadership challenges. So it's going to have about 8 different strategies for how to overcome issues that leaders face in the military. And it's actually going to be a little 4x6 cards that has a principle or strategy on it. And then at the bottom is a link to a speech, a 7-minute speech that I do. So I'm hoping that it will be a tool that can not only be used at our base, but throughout the military. Because, we live in a world that's stressed out, as we all know. And this has a lot of strategies on how to overcome emotional issues, PTSD, how to overcome stress, how to overcome failure, how to overcome worry. And I think it'll be a helpful tool. So I'm excited about contributing that as to the world, and to the military. And hopefully God will kind of bless it, and it will produce fruit somehow.
Wonderful. And I agree that you chose a very good topic for your doctorate. I think that will open up a lot of opportunities for you. Anybody else have any questions before we let Donnie go?
I just wrote a comment that I'd love to see that tool for the secular world.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And in truth, I think whatever I'm focusing it on the military because I have to focus it on something, but everything that's there, I think, will overlap and be applicable to church leaders, to business owners, to entrepreneurs. I think it'll apply to everybody. So when I get it done, I'll have to come back on and share it with you guys.
That would be great. Well, thank you so much, Donnie. We really, really appreciate it. And we will let you get back to your day now. And
thank you for giving me an opportunity, and thank you for this idea. This is a great idea to do, and you're tapping into. I know you're going to hear all kinds of different accredited speakers, and I just think this was a really good thinking on your part. Good job as a club.
Excellent. Thank you. And let's give Donnie a round of applause. Thanks, Donnie.
All right, you bet. Have a great meeting.
You too.